Welcome to episode 26 of the Adventuring for Mere Mortals podcast. I'm Kyle, joined with co-host Trevor, and this month we have wilderness instructor and AT thru-hiker Justin Tucker joining us. Hey Justin, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How's everything going on y'all's end?
Oh, it's good. It's always good.
Nice.
Yeah, so I guess to give everybody a little background, so Justin is yet another person that I've just sent a cold message to on Instagram. And we were lucky enough that he responded. We talked a little bit and he's like, yeah, I'm going to come on. We're going to do this thing. So you all heard the introduction that Kyle gave in the beginning. But yeah, Justin, he's going to be a great guest. Hike the AT. Now is currently a wilderness instructor. I'm really curious about that. So we're going to get into that. But I think before that, we normally do our little bit of a catch up. So I'll have Mr. or Dr. Kyle go first. What's up, man?
It's been a whirlwind since our last episode. Basically, skiing, working on vehicles, skiing, working on a camper, skiing again. Trying to take advantage of the snow while it's around. Not sure how much longer it's going to last here in central Pennsylvania. Last week we were in the 50s and 60s.
Same.
On Super Bowl Sunday, went skiing instead of watching the Super Bowl, and it was getting pretty thin in places. So fingers crossed. There's supposed to be a snowstorm coming tonight that's going to turn into snow and give us some more snow, and hopefully that will make it so that I can continue going out and enjoying the winter conditions. But what about you?
Not a terrible amount. Like you said, it's been actually fairly warm, but not super warm. So it's just everything's soggy because all the snow we had melted. But yeah, just normal stuff that I normally do this time of year, just indoor bike training, because I still can't run because of my dumb plantar fasciitis in my foot. I'm trying to get that. I'm trying to be a good boy and not run and hurt myself. But other than that, this time of year, it seems like I'm more cooped up in the house. So I just keep looking around and finding things that I don't like about my house or is broken in my house. So that's what I've been doing the last couple of weeks, is just fixing things that I find annoying in my house. But yeah, that's real mid-30s dude type stuff to do, I think. I'm a very boring adult. It's like, oh yeah, I'm just fixing things in my house. But
I'm just imagining you finding a squeaky floorboard and having a nail gun.
It's exactly stuff like that. Like I'll walk by something and be like, I've never noticed that before. Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. Fixed in a day or two. But enough about me and my DIY insanity. But
obsessive compulsiveness.
Yeah, except my DIY OCD. Justin, what have you been up to, man?
Yeah, I've been working for a nonprofit organization for the last year almost now, leading outdoor expeditions, primarily in the mountains of Western North Carolina. But during the winter season, I got the opportunity to come down in the Everglades and do the same thing. So it's a much different environment, which makes it very exciting and stimulating, but I've been enjoying it and having a good season.
That's cool. So you bring in what age folks are you bringing out? Is it kids, high schoolers, adults?
Yeah, primarily between age 13 all the way through high school. We have some courses and expeditions offered for college students. And then we have adult-specific programs like military vets, nurses, teachers, awesome, and things like that. So we serve a wide,
that's awesome.
audience.
So that's cool. I guess what time, I'm just going to go from like the very base. Like, what kind of stuff are you teaching? Is it like from folks that don't know anything about the outdoors all the way up, or do they have to have some base level of experience?
Yeah, it's sort of a combination of the technical skills of like backpacking, rock climbing, whitewater paddling, and then down here in Florida, we do canoeing in the 10,000 Islands National Park. Um, yeah, it's sort of a balance between those technical skills, like how to camp, how to backpack, how to pack your gear, and stuff like that. And also throwing in life skills like communication and leadership and decision making and things like that. So we focus really hard on that transference, like using the technical aspect as a way to teach you something that you can take back into your day-to-day life when you go home.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's awesome. Yeah, like I can just on top of my head, I can see it's like, yeah, the challenges that you're going to face out in the wilderness. You can
Right.
use that. I don't know, hard-headedness is the wrong word to use, but the drive, you got like, I overcame this. If I overcame this out here, I can overcome whatever challenges I have back in regular life. That's cool. I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
It's really about like stepping outside of your comfort zone. Like when you're at home, you have your friends and your family and your support systems. Well, hopefully. And when you come out on like an expedition that I might be leading, you might be thrown with a group of 10 people who you don't know, who you've never met before. You might have never been out camping or backpacking before. And so it's sort of learning how to become comfortable within that uncomfortable situation. And
Yeah.
if you can do that out in the wilderness, I think you can do that pretty much every day of your life.
Awesome.
Oh, for sure.
So the outdoors are a big part of your life, and now a professional part of your life. But how did you get introduced to the outdoors? Is it,
That's funny. It wasn't always a big day for the last, I would say, five or so years now. Funny enough, I was living in New York City, pursuing a career in the fashion industry. And I guess I sort of reached a certain point where that industry didn't really feel important to me anymore in the grand scheme of things. And I was dealing with some other just personal stuff. And I needed some sort of an outlet that felt better than what I was feeling in New York City. So I booked a random trip to Iceland, and I was there by myself for like a week and a half. This is my first time like leaving the country, first time ever like intentionally going outside just to see what was out there. And this was I think in 2018, and that pretty much just changed everything for me. Once I got there, and I'm just like hiking around, seeing all these waterfalls and beaches and mountains and all kind of stuff. And that's something that had never crossed my mind growing up. And being from Baltimore, I was actually always hearing like, oh, the woods are dangerous. Like Black people don't go there. So it's like, who am I to question that when that's what I'm hearing where I'm growing up? So I just,
Yep.
that sort of stuck with me. But yeah, probably around, it was age 27, I want to say. And that's when I sort of discovered the outdoors.
Cool. Well, that's
Yeah, man, like just booking a random trip to Iceland by yourself, and that's like your first outdoor experience. That is brave as hell, man.
Yeah.
You just went for it. Both feet just jumped right in. I love it.
Yeah. And my mom, who sits at home and worries about her
Oh,
two
great.
sons, she's like, you're about to do what? You're going where by yourself?
Yeah, that's mom's job. That's what moms are supposed to do. They're supposed to worry about their kids, so you can't fault them for it. All right, Kyle, I hope you'll permit me one tangent. And since now Justin has said he has some experience in the fashion industry, I have to ask him about kind of an off-the-wall term, but I saw it on the internet a couple of months ago. And I'm wondering
geez,
what
here we
his
go.
opinion is. So the term is gorpcore. And from my understanding as like a middle-aged dude, it's dressing like you're going to be doing like an outdoor expedition-y type activity, but you're just like walking around the city. Do you know what this term is, Justin? Have you heard this before?
Yeah, I've heard the term. I remember when sort of the urban hiker, quote unquote, started becoming a trend, and that was right around 2018 when I was like looking to transition out of the industry.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to myself, "Huh, that's funny. I just started getting outside, and now all of a sudden the fashion industry is obsessed with being outside, or at least looking like you went outside."
Yeah. Yeah.
It was interesting back then. I haven't really followed it too much. I didn't know that it was like still a thing, but it sounds like it
It,
is.
it sounds like they just rebranded like a urban hiking type of thing. But yeah, apparently it's a thing again. But yeah, like it seems like those fashion industry things, they just go in circles anyway, and it comes back around. But thank you for permitting me that one random tangent, Kyle. Now we'll get back to the main subject.
I'm proud of you. You kept it short.
Thank you. So yeah, so from your trip to Iceland, what was the next step?
The next step, I remember I got back to New York, immediately started looking into where I was going to go next. But then that's also when I sort of realized that you could take the train and go just upstate into the lower Hudson Valley. And there are these state parks, like I remember Harriman State Park, and there are all these hiking trails that go through Harriman. And I just decided I was going to figure out how to just like take the train, go upstate and go on a hike, and then get back to the city and enjoy the rest of my weekend, or get back to the city and get ready for work the next day. So once I sort of figured that out, then I was sort of running away from the city every weekend and going upstate and going on hikes. And I figured out the bus system and how to get around. And yeah, it just sort of took over.
No, that's awesome. I mean, obviously you found something you loved and you really went for it. And that's what this thing's all about, finding what makes you happy and going for it. But I think if I hope I'm not incorrect, that this kept building and eventually you decided to hike the Appalachian Trail, right?
Yeah, when I first started like taking the train upstate to go on these hikes, I like really needed like those experiences, and I needed that time to myself. And I remember I was on a hike with a friend of mine, and I didn't realize at the time that I was standing on the Appalachian Trail and I was hiking a tiny section of it in upstate New York. And I came across these other two thru-hikers at the time. And this was in 2019. So the next year after all this kind of started. And one of the guys was Black. And I was like, yeah, you look like you've been out here for a while. And he started telling me, yeah, I'm hiking from Georgia going up to Maine on the AT, and it just automatically piqued my interest.
Yeah.
And I remember the last thing he said to me before we like parted ways was, there's not a whole lot of us out here. And he pointed to like his hand, and that's a way of signifying like his skin color, talking about there's not a lot of Black people out there. And I was like, yeah, I think that makes sense. But I think I want to be out there in like the next couple of years. And I was just saying it, not knowing how I was going to come up with the finances to do it when I'm spending all my money just trying to survive in New York City.
Yeah.
But
it's expensive.
Yeah, I was like, one day I will have the money to be able to leave work for 6 months and hike a trail. And I guess after that, everything just kind of fell into place. I mean, the pandemic kind of worked in my favor because I don't think I would have been able to make it happen had those events not transpired.
Did you choose north to south or south to north?
I wanted to go south to north since that seemed to be the most like popular way to go. And I already felt like I was taking a risk by doing this. I didn't want to add on to that risk by going southbound. So I was like, let me just do a little bit of what I've looked into and researched, and I'm just going to stick with this. But also I wanted to meet people, and I remembered that folks who hiked southbound were saying that they didn't meet a lot of people, or they weren't able to form like lasting bonds with a lot of people because there aren't as many people going that direction. So I wanted to give myself the best chance to form some relationships.
No, from everything I've heard, northbound's the way to do that because there's a bunch of people out there, especially nowadays. It keeps like the numbers go up every year, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And
More people
almost too
touch the
many
trail.
people around certain areas at certain times of the year. But
Yep.
so yeah, you mentioned as like when you first got introduced to the AT from one of the southbound hikers met with it was a black individual. How was your experience going out there as like one of the minorities that were on the trail at the time? Because I know that it can be difficult, right? And yeah, go whichever direction you want to go with that.
Yeah, I think I went into the experience kind of having a guard up, but not a big one. It was just like, I want to be aware of my surroundings and what I'm doing and who I'm coming across and how I'm interacting with people. But ultimately, I would say I had a pretty positive. Well, it's so hard to like think about this again. We're 2 years out now, and I'm just like, what was I feeling? I started off having a really good time, and I was really enthusiastic and hopeful about what the experience could be. And I know after a certain point, I kind of just turned a little bit sour, and I was like, when is this going to end? There's the aspect of just it being so physically daunting, and also mentally and emotionally daunting. But then, like, knowing that I'm the only person of color that I'm seeing for the most part. Like, I think throughout that entire 6-month period, I must have run into less than like 50 people of color. And at this point, there's probably like at least 4,000 people who attempt a through hike every year, and to only see 50 that look somewhat similar to you, that really like was messing me up as time went along. So I don't know. I keep looking back on the experience and I have like different feelings about it every time I think about it. But I would say overall, I think that I was able to make it a positive experience, even when it didn't always feel super positive. That's how I look at it.
That's good. Yeah, like in my research that I try to do a good job of researching before we bring guests on, but I saw that at one point you almost quit. So like, can you go into like what you were feeling and thinking? Sorry if I'm stirring up like bad feelings and stuff, but like, how did you overcome that? I think that's a more positive outlook on it. Like how'd you pull it together and say, nope, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get this.
Yeah, I remember that moment that you're talking about. I was in Vermont and I had done like over 1,700 miles at that point, and I was feeling pretty alone. When people talk about the Appalachian Trail, there's this huge emphasis on like the community and the people that you meet and forming families. And I was fully prepared for that to be my experience. I think I'm a pretty social person. I think I get along with people pretty easily. So I was really anticipating like just going out there and making a bunch of friends. And the more that I was hiking along, I just felt like I wasn't really making friends. And I was like, is it me? Is it something I'm doing? Am I just not finding myself around the right people or what it is? And there were people around me who I did enjoy like seeing and hiking with and getting to know and things like that. But I just felt like those like tight-knit tramlines that you see and stuff like that wasn't really happening for me. And after so much time, I'm like, okay, am I gonna start to like feel like I'm connected to these people in some deeper kind of way? And it just didn't feel like it was happening. And I was hiking faster than people were hiking faster than me, so there's always that like tug of war of when we're going to see each other again, or if we're going to see the same people again every day. And yeah, all of that was just kind of wearing me down. And I got to a point where it was raining all day when the forecast said it wasn't going to be raining, and I was just over it. So I was like, yeah, no need for me to try to finish this if I'm just going to be miserable the whole time. So I contemplated quitting and going home.
Yeah, it sounds like you had multiple layers of like isolating factors that kind of all just came to a head all at once. And I'm really proud of you that I feel like most people would just say, you know what? It's not worth it. Like at this point, not having a good time. This is supposed to be in theory, a fun activity, right?
Yeah.
And you persevered.
And as you get further north, for those that aren't familiar with the Appalachian Trail, even though the states get smaller and more densely populated, it does become more and more remote. In fact, you end in what they call the 100-mile wilderness in Maine. So yeah, that I'm trying to put myself in your shoes in that area, feeling that, and just knowing what's coming. That because there's a number of books out there on through hiking, and whenever it comes to the 100-mile wilderness, that's in there is where there's a lot of demoralizing experiences, and folks rely on their trail families to get through, because you're carrying a lot of food, you're carrying a lot of supplies, because for 100 miles there's nothing. So yeah, kudos for sticking with it and finishing it out.
Yeah, while I was having those feelings of wanting to quit, I was also thinking about on the other end of the spectrum. It's like, most people who finish are going to probably take a photo at the summit of Katahdin, and that's going to be published in that AT yearbook that comes out every year. And you can already flip through that book from years past and maybe point out a handful of like brown skinned people. And I'm like, if I quit and go home, that's just one less brown skinned person that we're going to see in that yearbook if it were to come out next year. So once that thought sort of clicked in my head, it was like, okay, let's just finish this so that we don't have to think about how I could have finished it if I had decided to quit. So now I don't have to think about it because it's finished.
No, that's a sorry, I cut you off, Kyle, but I'll lose my train of thought if I don't get this out. But yeah, we've made this point in the past that, like, as you finished and you said your picture is going to be in the hiker yearbook, you can now be a person that inspires somebody else that may look like you to say, oh shit, I can do that. He did that. Yeah, I can do that too. Let's do this thing. So I always get so pumped and so excited when I see the same type of thing and the motivation happening over and over. It's like, yeah, let's get more people out there, because it's so much easier to do something when you see someone that looks like you that's out there doing it. Like Kyle and I, we don't have that issue. We're just two white dudes. Like, we see people doing shit all the time. But it's great to see that you can be that inspiration, that motivation for somebody else to get out there and do that. Sorry, Kyle, I had to get that out.
Well, my question was going to be, how did your family, take it whenever you broke the news to them that you were planning on through hiking? Because you had mentioned whenever you went to Iceland, your family's worrying about you, and a previous guest, Bree, had mentioned that whenever she started caving and climbing and doing stuff outdoors, that her family was supportive, but they didn't understand, and they would make remarks like, "That's things that crazy white people do," and I, I'm interested to hear, what your family thought of this is, coming from 2018, living in New York City, to 2022, through hiking an Appalachian, the Appalachian Trail, and that's 0 to 60.
Yeah, they definitely didn't understand what I was saying I was about to attempt. On the one hand, my family, they just want to make sure that I'm doing okay in life, and they want to make sure that I have some semblance of stability. And to say that I was quitting my job to spend the money that I had saved hiking a trail for 6 months, they didn't understand why I was making that decision. And then there's the part of it that's like, you're going to be hiking a trail for 6 months and sleeping in a tent and not showering every day and eating whatever food you can stuff in that little food bag. Like, what exactly are you doing? And so I had to do a lot of explaining. I had to explain to them all the ways in which I felt that I was trying to keep myself safe, like explaining to them what my Garmin inReach was and how it works and how they can be involved in keeping track of my location. And I started explaining to them how I had my YouTube channel that I had started. And as long as you see videos coming out, that means that I'm alive and I'm okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely had their thoughts and their worries.
Yep. So, you mentioned YouTube, and this is something that's becoming more and more popular as it becomes more accessible. That a lot of people are vlogging,
Mhm.
their experience, and it's interesting to me. I don't have social media, at least not something that I manage or broadcast on. But did that have an impact on your experience?
Definitely. Starting that YouTube channel, recording those videos was probably one of the best things that I could have done for my hike, in my opinion, is where I felt like for a lot of that hike, I was just alone and on my own. Sort of my presence on social media and the audience that I had garnered from filming the whole thing, that sort of helped me feel connected to someone, or like I had people who were with me, even if it was in spirit or through watching my lengthy videos. And I received messages from people saying that they saw my videos and they decided to hike last
Nice.
year in 2023. So I feel like, yeah, that was what made my hike probably the most valuable. Because in my mind, like pressing pause on your life for a few months to go hike a trail, it sounds like kind of a selfish thing to me. So I felt like I was giving something to someone else by just recording that
Yeah.
experience and putting out there for someone to find. Because I was looking, I mean, I had been following vloggers for years leading up to this, and it was always a struggle trying to find somebody who shared a similar experience to me, who was vlogging and actually vlogged an entire hike from start to finish. So I felt like that was something I wanted to do to put it out there.
Yeah. And once again, inspiring more people. Love it. To get back to like you explaining to your family about like how you were going to keep yourself safe on your hike. Have they come around at all? Because now you're doing outdoor stuff all the time. Is your mom still worrying all the time, or does she at least get that you like this? This is a part of you now, and that type of stuff.
I think that they see that getting outside and going on these adventures, it has become like a passion for me. It's something that I fell in love with at the most perfect time in my life. And it's something that I've been pursuing. I like to think that I gave my family a little teaser, because in the year before my through hike, I bought a gravel bike and said that I was going to bike pack. Um, I don't know if y'all have heard of the Great Allegheny Passage
Yep.
and the C&O Canal from Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh, but I decided that I was going to ride that trail and bike pack it. And so I just went out and bought the bike. I bought all of the stuff after watching a couple YouTube videos, and they didn't think I was going to seriously do that. They thought that I might be out for one day and then call them to come pick me up to take me home. But I tried my darndest to do that entire thing in 5 days, and I think they started to take me a little bit serious after that because it's like, oh, once Justin says he's going to do something, it ain't nothing you can say to really stop him. So,
That's awesome.
and like through hiking the AT and not quitting and finishing, that just reassured that again. And now I'm off living my life as an outdoor educator and wilderness instructor. And yeah, there's nothing that anyone has said that has ever steered me off of this path. And I think my family realizes that and understands that. So now they're just like looking to see what I do next or where I end up because I'm never in one place for super long, it seems like.
Yeah, that's a good question right there. What is next? You're just going to keep doing the wilderness educator, or are you going to take another 6 months off and have another adventure?
Oh, I've thought about if I would through hike again. Um, well, for starters, I don't know where I'm going to come up with the money to through hike again.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah, it was hard saving it up the first time, and I don't know if I have it in me to save it up again or to try to, but I still get the idea to want to do another trail, maybe something on a slightly smaller scale. Like I don't feel like I need to spend another 6 months. But yeah, we'll see. For now, I'm just sort of carving out a lane for myself in this outdoor education field.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm taking some steps in the direction that I want to go. So I'm super excited.
That's awesome, man.
Well, in your neck of the woods, there is a short through hike that you can do called the Foothills Trail on the North Carolina, South Carolina border.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Yeah, we did that. Was that 2-3 years ago, Kyle?
Yep.
3? But yeah, it's something like 70 some miles. I never know the exact mileage. I think we talked about this an episode or two ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a nice little trail. It's like, I think people, well, like you've already done the AT, but I've heard it mentioned as like a good trainer for the AT. A lot of ups and downs get you, and you're there in the Southern Appalachians. But
yeah, I remember people were on the Foothills Trail as like their shakedown hike before starting the AT. I've looked at it and it seems interesting. I know in Pennsylvania, Kyle, is that where you are right now?
Yep.
I've done the Loyal Sock Trail, and that was my shakedown hike. Because I was like, I've heard Pennsylvania is tough, so let's just like let's start there and see what that's like.
Yep. The Appalachian Trail actually runs just west of my house and then crosses the Susquehanna north, and yeah, it's stout, lots of rocks. But yeah, whenever I moved back here, I made a list of all the through hikes and the long trails that I could do in Pennsylvania, and I'm hoping to start crossing them off here in the coming months and years. So
Yeah, I still have a list on my phone in the Notes app of just all the through hikes that I've looked at over the years and that I might have an interest in. So the PCT is still on it, the CDT is still on it. Some international trails are on it, and just some smaller trails that maybe aren't talked about as much. So we'll see if I ever get around to knocking any more out. I hope so, but we'll see.
yeah, it's always fun to have those like bucket list type things. I have a lot, like it's got more than I could do if I started hiking from now until I died. I would never get it all done, but it's fun to have it out there and say, every once in a while you'll knock one off. Like, okay, I can mark that one off. But then there's 3 more that get put on right after you mark that one out, and it just grows and grows and grows. So
yeah,
it's fun.
based on your experiences and getting into the outdoors later in life, and now your passion for doing wilderness instruction, introducing folks to the outdoors and building skill sets that will potentially encourage a lifetime of positive outdoor experiences. What would you recommend to someone just getting into it? I'm sure you've had to do this in your day-to-day role as a wilderness instructor, but looking back, what would be your one piece of advice that you would give to folks?
I think just for the sake of encouraging people to get outside in any way that feels like accessible to them, I would say just start small. It doesn't have to be some grand adventure, or you don't have to go buy a tent and go camp out somewhere. You can just go for a walk. Or maybe that walk is more like a hike. Maybe that hike is more like a bike ride. Just go out and do something and really be intentional about spending that time like outside and with yourself and with everything around you, and don't sort of confine yourself to reaching for your devices so much. Just like go outside, enjoy the quiet, enjoy whatever is happening around you in that space, and just let that be the start and just see where it takes you.
That's beautiful. Love it.
That's not how I started. I jumped on YouTube and started looking up like what's the gear that everyone's talking about, and I took the shopping approach where I bought everything first. Then I was like, okay, now I'm ready to go.
Hey, that could be a good motivator. You're like, well, I already bought all this stuff. I have to use it, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, anything that you can get to motivate you is good, right?
Yeah.
So I ask this of everybody. What is your biggest outdoor mistake? This could be on any of your adventures. It could be while you're doing the wilderness instructor thing. Whatever you want with it.
My biggest outdoor mistake. I would say it was a mistake that thankfully it ended well, but it was also a poor choice. And I'm going to take it back to my thru hike. There was a day in Pennsylvania where I was just close enough to a town to feel like I could race to get there, but I wasn't close enough to be able to outrun the thunderstorm that was blowing in. So I remember hiking over a mountain in Pennsylvania in the middle of a lightning storm, which was not the smartest decision, but yeah, I did it. I didn't tell my mom about it because I know how she is, and she is terrified of lightning storms. But yeah, I made out all right. I ducked into a shelter and decided to just wait it out after getting drenched, because
of course, yeah,
you got to go through it and then decide to like take shelter. But yeah, I would say that was a mistake just because it was a poor decision on my hand, but it ended well and I made it to that town, and that was actually, I think, my longest hiking day, where I put in like 32 miles or something like that. And I was like, I'm going to get to this town and I'm going to beat this storm, but didn't go as smooth as I thought.
Yep, like we've said before, Mother Nature doesn't care who you are. Like,
yeah,
it can thrash you no matter what. And sounds like you got a bit thrashed that day.
Yeah.
I'm glad you made it through safe, because yeah, like you said, your mom's afraid of lightning storms. They're terrifying, man. There's a lot of times there's nothing you can do. Like, well, I'm a tall dude, so like anytime if I was out like on a plane, I'm 100% the thing that's going to get hit by lightning if it's around. So I have a healthy fear of lightning storms as well.
Yeah, and oddly enough, there was this other guy who I like ran past, and he was just casually also hiking through the storm, but he wasn't as concerned as I was. I was like, I got to get off this mountain, but he was just kind of chilling, and he just embraced the stuff, I guess, and just accepted getting drenched. And he did not pick up his pace at all. So I had to go around him so that I could get myself to safety.
Hey, you got to look out for number one sometimes.
Yeah. Last thing I want is my mom getting a call.
Oh yeah. Heard that. No, that was perfect. Thank you. And for my last question, I use this just as a catch-all because we're not perfect, and like I throw some questions together, but I miss things a lot of times. Is there something that we really should be asking you that we just haven't and we just missed? Because like you have a much different background than Kyle and I, so we're always open to hear where we screwed up and what we should have been asking you.
Yeah. If there's anything you should be asking me, I'm not sure if I have an answer to that question right now. I mean, I know that I've done a few like conversations and podcasts where the questions always come up of like, why aren't there more Black people and people of color outside? And like, what are the barriers, or what can we do to break those barriers down? And just to be honest, I don't have all the answers. Like, I
It's
know
not
what
your
I'm doing. Yeah,
it's not
I
your
know
job
what
to
I'm
have those answers.
right. So it's difficult because there are like conversations that still need to be had. And I just saw on Instagram the other day how like climate change disproportionately affects people of color, but green organizations aren't reaching out to people of color for hiring purposes, for like outreach and supporting community purposes. Like that percentage is still very small. But from what I have read and understand, like people of color do the most for like climate action and climate change and things like that. So there are still a lot of little like disconnects within the outdoor industry and within the outdoor community. And I think it takes people talking, it takes people being honest about, you know, where we live and what's the history of this country. And it always goes back to the history of this country. As much as people want to like look past it, and as ready as people think they are to move on from it, we can't move on from it because there hasn't been enough that has changed. So I don't exactly know where I'm going with this, but
No,
that is just
that's
kind
good.
of the message that I'm trying to get across. And I'm also just trying to get more Black people outside because we still occupy the least percentage of participants in the outdoors. And I'm tired of seeing that because the outdoors kind of changed my life in a time where I needed it. And I was able to see that change happening. And I just want more people and more people of color who might still be carrying a ton of trauma from all the things that we still continue to face. And I want them to have more of an opportunity to sort of have that changing experience and to have that healing experience. So that's pretty much what I'm all about right now.
So, in your opinion, what's something that will go grassroots that individuals can do to encourage more participation by minoritized, communities to get them in the outdoors?
I think there are so many different efforts that need to happen at the same time, and there are a lot of efforts happening at the same time. Like we've got to call out these organizations who are spitting DEI and all these phrases and terms, but aren't actually incorporating that into their business practices. We've got to call out local and national and international governments who aren't really doing much of anything about climate change. Like there are so many different things. And then me as a person of color, I'm speaking directly to the people who I identify the most with. And I'm just like trying to be a voice and like a visual representation that like we belong out here. So we should be out here. And I want people to feel safe or safer if they're like seeing me and they're seeing all that I've done, and if they want to come outside with me, like I'm always trying to invite people to join me, and I love that experience and how that promotes connection and stuff like that. So yeah, sort of lost track of the question, but that's my answer.
No, that was perfect, man. That was great. No, like, so that's pretty much all the questions we had. Thanks for being like so open, honest, and just straight to the point. It's been great. So yeah, I'm gonna bring it home. Yeah, Justin, is there anything you want to plug? Social media, YouTube, any of that?
To be honest, I don't utilize my social media as much as I have in the past, but I'll still go ahead and say you can find me on Instagram at Trailhead Justin. If you want to go back and watch my vlogs from 2022 on the Appalachian Trail, you can search Trailhead Justin on YouTube. I honestly said that I was going to one day sit down and watch them all, but I still haven't been able to bring myself to do it. But hopefully that will come soon. But yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Y'all can find me there.
Perfect. All right, I'll bring it on home. So yeah, if anybody out there wants to support the podcast, the best way to do that and help us in all those podcast algorithms out there is to rate us 5 stars and write us a review. So you can do that on Apple, mostly on Apple. I think you can do it on Spotify too, but I don't know who actually does that. The podcast Instagram is at Mere Mortal Pod. You can follow that. If you want to send us a note, tell us we're doing a great job, suggest future guests, you can email us at adventuringformeremortals@gmail.com. We also have a Discord server, if that's your thing. I put some stuff on there. There's a few people on there, but the invite link for that is in the show description. My personal Instagram is at Trevor Bowman. You can follow me there. Kyle doesn't have official social media, so you can wave to people that look like they're a Kyle in Central PA, but it's still there. We have Kyle's fake Instagram account that I started that he has no control over. It's called, the tag is at Kyle doesn't have social media, no apostrophe and doesn't. So you can follow that. Kyle's girlfriend and I have control, and we're going to post some stuff there at some point. But yeah, other than that, Justin, thanks again so much for coming on. This is great. Loved having you on. And yeah, we'll see everybody next month.